Today at T-Mobile, I'm joined by a special co-anchor.
What up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Snoop Deal Double G.
Snoop, where can people go to find great deals?
Head to T-Mobile.com and get 4 iPhone 16s with Apple Intelligence on us, plus 4 lines for $25.
That's quite a deal, Snoop. And when you switch to T-Mobile, you can save versus the other big guys' comparable plans plus streaming.
Respect. We up out of here.
See how you can save on wireless and streaming versus the other big guys at T-Mobile.com/switch. Apple Intelligence requires iOS 18.1 or later.
I can say to my new Samsung Galaxy S25 Ultra, hey, find a keto-friendly restaurant nearby and text it to Beth and Steve. And it does, without me lifting a finger. So I can get in more squats anywhere I can. 1, 2, 3.
Will that be cash or credit?
Credit. 4.
Galaxy S25 Ultra, the AI companion that does the heavy lifting so you can do you. Get yours at Samsung.com. Compatible with select apps. Requires Google Gemini account. Results may vary based on input. Check responses for accuracy.
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Oh, wonder-working power in the precious...
Incredible as they seem, are not the results of mass hysteria.
You may wish to adjust the dial. You're currently tuned into the wrong station. There's this guy, regular of mine. Don't know him too well. I just see him every day. I guess regular don't really do it justice. But anyway, he works downtown near where I got my truck. I think he might be like a janitor or something in one of the big buildings. I see the guy every single morning, and he always gets the same thing. I ask him, "Hey, boss, what'll it be?" And he'll say, "Hey, boss, give me the egg and chopped cheese with the S&P. And I make him, what I might be biased in claiming, the best egg and cheese you can get in the financial district, possibly even between Spadina and Young, Queen and Front. If you're just talking about trucks. 2 eggs, beat just right, fluffy and golden, good American orange with a touch of the pecorino. Ooh, you gotta have the pecorino. Pinch of salt and pepper, breakfast roll toast on the flat top. Foil in his hands. Here you go, boss. Thanks, boss. He's gone. Rinse and repeat. Good guy. Consistent. Thing is, I'm a little worried about him. You see, he's looked a little down this last month. I don't want to say he's depressed. It seems like everyone's saying they're depressed these days. My 8-year-old nephew's saying he's depressed. But it's a little more than the Monday blues, if you get me. So I asked him about it a few weeks back. I start with, "Hey, boss, what'll it be?" And he says, "Hey, boss, give me the egg and chopped cheese with the S&P. And I get to making it, and I ask him, "How you doing, pal?" And him, silent type, you know, he just kind of shrugs his shoulders and says, you know how it is this time of year." And I nod. "Yes, I do, boss. Yes, I do." Foil in his hands. "Here you go, boss." "Thanks, boss." And he's gone. Not much to go off. But it gets me thinking, yeah, he does get this way this time of year. I should know. He's here every single day. Consistent. Guess I never thought too much about the timing, though. And maybe because it was a bit of a gradual thing. Last 5 Octobers, and a bit worse each time. What do you think that's about, huh? I thought everybody loved this month. The costumes, the parties, the beautiful weather, and the treats. Oh, madame, the treats. That's my favorite part, don't you know? That and the tricks. But maybe he's got his reasons, I figure. Some bad memory or something that gets him down. I may have my Halloween traditions that I love, but that don't mean it's the same for everyone. So I let it go for a week. Try to ignore it. Try to hold back on my proclivities. Ooh, nice Scrabble word. To be helpful. But the next Wednesday, it was the 30th, I gotta ask again. Because forget Blue. By now he's gray. Hey, boss, what'll it be? Hey, boss, give me the egg and chopped CHEE with the S&P. Sizzle, chop, sizzle, you know the drill. Hey, pal, I start. I gotta ask, what's going on? You ain't looking too hot these days. And he just gives me this 1,000-yard stare. Ain't even looking at me, more like through me. Maybe 10 seconds of this. Then he looks down and starts mumbling, like he's having trouble getting the words out. Have you ever been unable to stop yourself from doing something? Something you know is going to hurt you. Maybe even hurt the people around you. No, boss, no, I have not. I tell him. We talking about a lady or something? No, he says. No. Foil in his hands. Here you go, boss. Thanks, boss. And he's gone. Oh, man, I think, oh, man. That doesn't sound good. Doesn't sound good at all. Kind of thing a guy says before you read about him in the papers the next day. What's he talking about? I wonder all day. Who's he talking about? What's he talking about doing to who? The wife and kids? Hell, I don't even know if the guy's married. Office where he works? I think about if I should call the cops or something. But what do I tell him? All night I toss and turn, thinking about it. Hoping I'll see him come the morning. And, sure as the sun rises, I do. I breathe a huge sigh of relief. Nobody else in line when he gets there, and he just walks right up. He doesn't look good, but I'm just happy to see him. Hey, boss, what'll it be? And he doesn't say nothing at first. Looks at me. Looks down. Goes from blue to gray to green. Looks back up, almost pleading look in his eyes. Pleading for what from me? I got no clue. Then he just exhales, and he says, Hey, boss, give me the egg and chopped CHEE with the S&P. And I say, Yes, sirree, boss. And his face just twists in terror as I start cooking up a storm. You never been to my truck on Halloween, huh? Oh, buddy, let me tell you, it's a hoot. Every year, I whip up a special, scary, ghoulish sandwich. My little version of trick-or-treat. Started off one year where I used duck eggs all day for that beautiful orange color. The next year was a squirt of squid ink for black. Got a little crazier each year. Added lamb brain a while back. Tasty if you grill it right. Bat meat the next. It's, probably not the most popular. By now, nearly everyone steers clear of the truck on the 31st. Especially after the last with the rotten eggs and moldy cheese. Only way to get that color. And I guess that's the price of artistic expression. But this guy comes every day. Can't help himself. Like I said, he's consistent. Foil in his hands. Here you go, boss. Thanks, boss, he says. And he looks at it. He unwraps it right there and takes a sniff. Fine with me. Isn't like there's anyone else waiting. He takes a bite, and his eyes light up for a second as his teeth sink into fluffy egg, runny cheese, and the pecorino. Oh, what a treat. But then, the trick. His eyes go back hollow, and he stops chewing. He opens his mouth and lets the food just tumble out, and a thick stream of blood with it. Thought I'd try something topical this year, you know. It's that thing they talk about on the 8 o'clock news where people put bad stuff in kids' candy. He sticks his tongue out, and it's just too good. Sewing needles sticking out here and there, maybe 8 or 9 of them. He spits out a big chunk of his tongue along with a shiny new razor blade. And then he just looks up at me for a second, like he's going to say something. But he doesn't. And then he's gone. You know what, though? He was back the next morning. Of course. And he seemed like he was doing better. I guess whatever was getting him down passed. A real relief. You gotta look after customers like that. The consistent ones. It's how we stay in business. Horns of ale passed from hand to hand. The bonfire burned bright and sweet from the cherry wood old Bran had brought from the secret copse he maintained somewhere in the woods. The clan stood around the fire, full of smoke and alcohol and song. Fiona could feel the souls passing amongst them, dancing on the other side of the wind. Yes, the doors to the other world were well and truly open, and as the cold lay thickly across the land, the dead came to those doors stamping their feet to wait for the living souls to invite them in. The burial mounds seemed to shudder with impatience. They were not accustomed to being kept waiting. Since childhood, Fiona's family would set her grandfather's place at the table, welcoming his spirit back into their home. Most families did the same, although some with more trepidation than others. Some spirits deserved welcome, others appeasement. Ordinarily, she had no fear of those who lived in the other world. What was a fae to her? What was a spirit? Even a lesser god, enamored with her harvest offering. Let them all come. And Fiona had many new spirits to welcome. Her brothers, father, mother, friends, all taken in the past year. She ached to see them. It had been months, and she was cold and alone in the house. But she couldn't welcome them. It was so very important that this night, of all nights, they kept their attention away from the dead, away from the other world entirely. The risk was too great. Let this be a festival of meaningless ritual, of performance. Anything to keep the past in the past for just this one Samhain. Fiona twirled and danced around the fire. All the missing dancers, empty spots around the flames, feet that should still be stomping and leaping. All gone, all gone. All the work of one man. He so recently deceased. He whose axe still danced in the empty spaces around that fire. She spun faster, trying to shake the thoughts loose, to cast them away. He must not be welcomed. And even as she thought it, Fiona put her hand in the fire as if to burn away the idea itself. The pain and the smell of burnt skin was enough to distract her. Nobody around the bonfire seemed to notice, so focused they were on the act of celebration. And indeed all their faces seemed jolly and cheerful, a regular Samhain. Certainly fewer in the village, but no, she mustn't dwell on that. Jolly, cheerful. How many had died since the last Samhain bonfire? An image flashed through her mind. Fiona on the road. She mounted a hill and found 3 corpses on the other side. Her father was among them, gutted and left to rot like spoiled meat, his rucksack slit open and pockets empty. Why? All for what? She took up her dance again, trying to think of anything else instead. Perhaps the harvest. The harvest where half the fields lay uncollected, crops smoldering in the autumn sun. Too few hands. Someone grabbed her hands, Killian, and danced with her for a few steps. But the dance soon became muddled and clumsy until they both stopped, and he dropped her hands. They stood apart in the dim light of the fire, and she could see the tear tracks on Killian's face. They were coated in ash. He wandered away, focusing hard on something else. Killian's family, 4 new graves on the green hillside, the grass still thin on the turned earth even as it yellowed with the coming autumn. Many times they had crossed paths to and from the stone markers, alone in their grief. Fiona spun herself away from the memory. Dancing. Dancing! There must be more dancing. If the last year was unbearable, then surely the distant past could offer relief. Then Fiona was a child again, dancing around the fire as a fawn gallops through the woods. And there was Killian, stomping out of rhythm, and there her father and mother, and there her sister, and there her brothers. Everyone was together. The world was whole again. She and Killian had grown up together. They'd all grown up together. More happy memories then. She remembered a summer morning by the rocks. Her and Killian and the other children down at the rock pools. They skipped from one pool to the next, collecting scallops and mussels and small crabs trapped there by the retreating tides. Killian was there, of course. But who else? She racked her brain, finding pleasure in the happy memory. Moirin, who was old enough now to have a husband. Used to have a husband. Donal, who they'd found with his throat cut. Not that path. She thought of the other children, hopping and pecking at the pools, but could only find blank faces with no names. Then, one face stood out. Small, bright eyes, haloed with freckles. A wide smile. He sat by the pool with her, quietly pulling at a barnacle. She tried to help him, but it was no use. Instead, they hunted for scallops and other treasures. What was his name? She hunted for it as if it were a scallop, grateful for the distraction. Small boy, bright eyes, wide smile. Who could it be? She could see him clearly at the rock pools, playing swords with a floppy yew branch, singing the old songs. She could even see him dancing around the bonfire on a Samhain just like this. Nothing else. Memory was a funny thing. What had happened to him since those days? She couldn't recall. It was as if no time had passed, and also as if all the time in the world lay between her and those childhood days. She twirled again and stared back into the fire. And as the face took shape, she heard a scream. She whipped around. Moirin ran past her, followed by Killian and the others. It was just her, and the face in the fire. The strangely familiar face. No, it wasn't possible, thought Fiona. It had been years ago. The child was not the same as the man. The monster. He could not pass through. He couldn't. She hadn't welcomed him. She'd welcomed the child. And even as she protested, begged, and cried foul, even as she tried to close the doors to the other world by sheer force of will, the man stepped from the middle of the bonfire, his small, bright eyes dancing with the flames, his mouth shaped into the same wide smile of the young boy. But for that Samhain, he was free for that one night. He stood before her, holding the sword that had killed so many, dressed in the wounds that had felled him. "Hello, Fiona," he said. "Remember me?" And try as she might, she did. Something rustled in the greenery. "You hear that? Shit! There's nothing there, you fucking idiot!" "It's just the wind." 4 soldiers held position in a pumpkin patch, sheltered from the eyes of enemy drones by the tall froth of foliage. The plants were big this time of year, high like floodwaters. Their leaves were dark and bluish-green, like the slick camouflage gunmetal of Jensen's spotter. "I don't know, man." Clark was still glancing over his shoulder. "You think they could have got around us?" "Don't be paranoid. Commies don't even know we're here." "Any movement in the village, Jensen?" "Negative. They'll never even see us coming." It was 3 years since the contested election, 32 months since the first secession. There were 2 presidents, and each claimed to have been duly elected. The 4 men in the pumpkin patch fought for the true president. Tonight, they would enter the village below, where they would round up and execute any suspected traitor in his name. The foliage rustled again. It was a breezy October evening, warm with climate change, and the yellow sky was turning dim. "I swear to God," said Clark, "there's something here." "And stop bitching about it and keep your eyes peeled," said Jensen, not believing him. Biting down on an answer, Clark turned and took a few crouching steps away from the others, peering through the high foliage of the patch. The sun was beyond the horizon now. The sky was still light, but it was already dark underneath the leaves. Something rustled in the greenery. Could it tell us it's out there again? But Clark didn't answer. He was gone. "Holy shit. Eyes up," said Jensen, suddenly quiet, suddenly serious. He had the spotter back at his hip and both hands on his M4. "Spread out. Hold fire if you can. I don't want us giving away our position just because Clark got his dumb ass lost in a pumpkin patch." "Bullshit," said Costa, sweating. "They already know we're here. They got him." "We don't know that yet," said Jensen. "Clark!" he called in a carrying whisper. But there was no answer as the October wind rose and the gloom of the patch rustled around them. "See?" hissed Costa. "He's fucking gone." Now Jensen could feel himself sweating too, and the sweat was cold. "Okay, you take the left. Kenner, you're on the right." But Kenner was gone too. And suddenly, Jensen realized the wind had stopped, but the sound of rushing foliage was louder than ever before. Whatever it was hit Costa like a freight train. He was only a few yards away, but in the gloom and the leaves, Jensen could only make out an impression of incredible speed and force, of hugeness in the dark leaves. He heard the rending of Kevlar and snap of ceramic plate breaking, and the sad little huff of air as Costa's lung collapsed. Throwing all plans to the wind, Jensen shouted and opened up with his carbine, spraying bullets into the darkness. The muzzle flashed so bright against the gloom his eyes were dazzled. Suddenly, all was still. "Reloading!" he shouted, praying, just praying any of his fire team were still alive. The plating on his boots was so thick, he didn't even feel it as something wrapped around his ankle. He snapped his weapon back up, blinking hard, trying to clear the flashing after-images behind his eyelids. But everything was dim. Then, out of nowhere, it was above him, huge and round, and grinning with its hand-spanned triangular teeth. He barely would have been able to make out its silhouette against the fading sky, if not for the dim flicker of light inside the cavern of its skull. It told him, "Happy Halloween!" And then, as he screamed again and squeezed the trigger, the vine wrapped around his ankle, yanked him off balance and into the air. Bullets sprayed wildly into the leaves and dirt and autumn sky. And then he was lowered face first into the smiling jaws, and his life ended with a crunch. Down in the village, May was woken by the sound of gunfire. She was out of bed and down the stairs in a heartbeat. She'd been evacuated during the fall of Philadelphia. That rattling firecracker sound of distant gunfire would haunt her until the end of her days. But when she burst out onto the porch, her grandpa was sitting easy in the porch swing, with a shotgun across his lap and a big cinnamony mug of chocolate milk on the low table beside him. "I heard shots," she told him. "I think there's soldiers in the hills." But her grandpa just smiled and shook his head, offering her the mug of chocolate. "Hey, don't you worry about it," he told her. "Big Hash Pumpkin got him." The Wrong Station is made possible with the generous support of our listeners on Patreon. Visit today at patreon.com/thewrongstation. You can also support us by leaving a rating and review on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever it is you tune into the show. This final October surprise, somewhat curtailed snips of a Halloweenical nature, was written by Anthony Botello, Alexander Saxton, and Jacob Duarte Spiel. Thank you to Shut the Fuck Up Donnie NPC, Kalizko, Rachel Schrattenholzer, Marie A., David Barry, and Taylor Crane for helping us keep the lights, well, off. The Wrong Station is co-produced by Alexander Saxton, Anthony Botello, and Jacob Duarte Spiel, with music composed and performed by Alon Citron and arranged for the viola and performed by Viola Schmidt. You can follow The Wrong Station on social media at The Wrong Station and email us at thewrongstation@gmail.com. And until next time, thank you for listening.